So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace. So, therefore, oh, I left my thing. Where's my brain? I can catch it, I swear. I lost it in the lights. Thank you. That was loving and gracious of you. So, therefore, because of all the stuff that's come before this, we do everything in the spirit of love and grace. Let's cut to the chase. Jim summarized it like this. I think the phrase, so we do everything in the spirit of love and grace, is a most excellent way of summing up the statement. We recognize that other people are different from us. They do come from different backgrounds and have different experiences that we can never fully understand. There is indeed a tendency to put persons in preconceived categories, but we resist this, to understand the unique person. We resist the temptation to compare our level of status and spiritual attainment with the other by reminding ourselves that we are each on unique paths which make comparisons impossible. We realize doing everything in the spirit of love and grace makes our lives better and makes the world a better place. So, we're at the end of the community statement. Just at the moment, you think you might catch your breath or you find your mind wandering. So, it calls you to your own attention, which is sort of what everybody shared, sort of the summative nature of the community statement, especially this line. It transitions us to a call to action. So, in connection with, flowing from, retroactively informing everything that came before it, we do. This is a shared commitment to a way of being, to some behaviors, some verbs, some actions, not abstractions, not beliefs, not ideas or objective thoughts, but doing, acting, living, being. And we do everything, which raised the question at Occupy Trilogy, Tuesdays at 4. You should come check it out. Is the everything about the community statement, or is it about more? And as is so often the answer at Collective, yes. William Faulkner says, in order to understand the world, you must first understand a place like Mississippi. I don't know if he said it that way at the time, but this theme is going to be woven throughout the night tonight. To get to the big thing, to get to the world, to get to the universal, you got to start with the small, with the particular, with a specific thing. The prophets cannot talk about their vision of heaven on earth without talking about building houses, without talking about planting vineyards, without addressing weeping, without addressing what hurts. And so we can't talk about the spirit of love and grace without calling our attention to what we do. And so everything begins with the everything in the community statement, and then the hope is that it will overflow into the everything else. So the community statement shares some behaviors, it shares some values, and in that way, it's not different from the way a family functions. And so I say to my kids pretty regularly things like, we tell the truth. We don't hit one another. And of course, the immediate context of that is family. This is how we live together under our roof. But the hope is my kids will become respectful, nonviolent, honest people in everything that they do, such that the everything that we're about overflows into the everything that they become in every space that they inhabit. And to be clear, and we sort of talked about this during the discussion, we say this very often. We're not claiming that this is already true of us. In fact, we speak it over and over because it's probably not true of us, but we long for it to be. We're calling ourselves to this. This is why we say this every week. And in the same way, when I say to my kids, we tell the truth, it's probably because they've been lying, right? That's why I have to say it to them over and over. Part of the reason we need a reminder each week that we do everything in the spirit of love and grace is because I don't know about you, but I don't do everything in the spirit of love and grace. But I'm calling myself to this. And I'm calling myself to this in front of all of you. And you're being called to this every week. Your affirmation by presence in this room in front of everyone else in here. We do everything in the spirit of love and grace. So, we do everything in the spirit. What does that even mean? I'm not going to camp on it, but this can be read in a couple of ways, right? And I love that, which is very collective. This might be a theological statement about our understanding that when we live this life, articulated in the community statement, that we live this life in God, in the all-encompassing Spirit, in whom everything that is. And we have that interchangeability factor, right? We talked about this quite a bit in the First John series in the fall. God is love is God. So if we do everything in the spirit of love, we're saying we sort of do everything in the spirit of God, if you buy into that. And check this out. Our own Katie Steinberg, she realized that if you went through that entire Psychology Today reading, what love is and what it's not, if you swap out the word God for the word love, it paints one of the most compelling pictures of God I have ever read. I just want to give you a few examples. So this is just from the article. I've just changed the word love for God. God is a force of nature. However much we may want to, we cannot command, demand, or take away God any more than we can command the moon and the stars and the wind or the rain to come and go according to our whims. God is bigger than you are. You can invite God, but you cannot dictate how, when, and where God expresses itself. You can choose to surrender to God or not. But in the end, God strikes like lightning, unpredictable and irrefutable. God does not come with conditions, stipulations, addenda, or codes like the sun. God radiates independently of our fears and desires. God is inherently free. God cannot be bought, sold, or traded. God cannot be imprisoned, nor can it be legislated. God is not substance, not a commodity, nor even a marketable power. God has no territory, no borders, no quantifiable mass or energy output. God is love. And even if you don't believe that or care for the God word, you can be inspired by that understanding of love. And you can trust that on our best days, when we mean God, that's what we mean. Or to get even more particular, that this form of life that we see in the community statement is the way that we best understand what it means to live in the Spirit of Christ. Jesus says at the end of the Gospel of John, I'm going to leave, but the Spirit that animated my work and empowered my movement and inspired my love is going to go on. Have some. Have some. So maybe what we mean by Christianity is this kind of life, inspired by this kind of Spirit. And so maybe it's this kind of life in God, or us in this Spirit, or us in this sort of ongoing cosmic Christ. But it also can just be a function of inspiration such that even without a specific theological conviction or a hard and fast belief in God or Jesus, someone might actually choose to live this life with us. Someone might choose to practice this form of being in the Spirit, or we might say inspired by love and grace. But if we're honest, love and grace are hard to nail down. We were talking at Occupy Trilogy about the distinctions between love and grace, not just sort of in terms of abstract theology, but like at collective. As we experience love and grace in our lives and in this community, what does grace feel like at collective? So sort of started talking about this. People said, well, there's an acceptance, right? Myra said, grace means we don't have to hide. I can be myself with my questions. There's time for relationships to develop. They're not rushed, where we can actually get to know people. Instead of making assumptions, there's a supportive network of friends that bridges across generational divides. Interestingly, though, as you might expect, some people started going, well, what you're talking about as grace, that's what I've experienced as unconditional love. When you call love, I call grace. Interesting. That same acceptance that you call grace, I think that's love. Well, no, that's not unconditional love. That's what I've always sort of understood as grace. And very quickly, we were reminded that all religious language is metaphor. So imagine two people have an experience of God. They experience the sacred. And one of them is a low-income HUD home builder from Detroit, and the other constructs cathedrals in Italy. And in response to their experience, the one builds this crappy little church, and it looks like a HUD home, and it's got dingy carpet and stucco and rusty folding chairs, and there's cigarette butts on the ground, and it feels like a support group meeting. And the other builds an absolutely magnificent cathedral. Stained glass, pipe organ, ornate iconography, an ostentatious baptismal font. There's a gilded altar. At first, we might think, well, they certainly didn't capture the other's experience, right? Detroit HUD builder didn't capture the cathedral experience. Cathedral builder didn't capture the HUD experience. But the trick is, neither one of them even captured their own experience. They were merely responses to it. And so with words like love and grace, we are the architects of their meaning. They are words that are loaded with meaning for us in response to an experience of something. But they are not words that can capture that experience. And so part of living in the spirit of love and grace is acknowledging that we are participating in inhabiting the cathedrals of these words with the meaning and the vitality of our own lives based on our shared understandings and experience of these things that we've decided to name love and grace. And so for me, sitting at Occupy, sitting on the patio with all these people, having this conversation where everyone is sharing these beautiful and varied and poetic and deeply personal and often very tragic, difficult understandings of love and grace, and we still can't nail it down. We still can't agree on what we even mean by love and grace. We can't apprehend love and grace. For me, that's love and grace. That mutuality, sharing, giving and receiving, offering with open hands from each person's lived experience of love, of grace. The song that we opened with tonight, which the band crushed it. How about another hand for the band? Really coming out tonight. That opening song is called Yellow by Coldplay. They're definitely on my live show bucket list. I looked in the background of the song and I'd forgotten about this. I think I actually looked this up in college. The word yellow was actually a placeholder in the writing process when Chris Martin was writing the song. Like, he had in mind an experience, right? So he had this experience and then he had a style in mind. He wanted to do some like sort of a Neil Young vibe. And it was a story about love, about unrequited love. And he kept thinking as the song developed that he would come up with the word. He'd find the right word and he would swap it out at the last minute before they played it live or before they put it on a record. And all of the rest of the song kept coming together, and the band got involved, and they kept waiting for a better word to express the experience of the love in the song, but it never came. And so the placeholder became the centerpiece of the song. And I can't help but think that maybe that's how love and grace and HUD churches and cathedrals work. That they are only love and grace. They are only allowed to stand out and name our experience of love and grace insofar as we fill them with those things. Because if we're honest, there are actually many places in which, and many people in whom words like love and grace have been weaponized, and they've been used to harm people or to hurt us. Or maybe they've been commodified and they've been shamelessly used to transactionally indebt one person or one group to another. Lisa was sharing about some rough experiences she had with folks who used these words a lot, and she said, help came with strings. Help came with strings. That is not love. That is not grace. I have a good friend who, when she came out, was disowned by her extremely conservative family, who continues to pray that she will change, and who says they did it because they love her. For how many people has the gospel of grace been about avoiding eternal conscious punishment in hell? Grace? Grace? You're going to call that grace? Really? And there are many places where love is present and grace isn't, or grace seems to be present, but love isn't. And at the end of the day, whatever these words mean and whatever we mean by them and whatever they mean to us, let's just agree that neither is either without the other. There is no love without grace, and there is no grace without love. Or to put it positively, grace calls us to respond in love. Love calls us to respond in grace. And I know these are tough to nail down. They're constructs of our responses to the experiences that we have named love or named grace. But for the sake of our communal experience, what kind of shared meaning might help us to hold them, even if we agree to hold them loosely? I'm not going to spend any time on love because we spent the entire fall in the letter of 1 John wrestling with God and love, and because I really think that the Psychology Today reading offered a really healthy, mature understanding of love. Highly recommend you go look at it. So the spirit of love and grace, charis is the Greek word that's used throughout the New Testament. Gift, to give, or grace, a gift, given without expectation of return. There's this early definition by a Greek philosopher with an amazing name, Spiro Zodhiakes, the absolutely free expression of the love of God, finding its only motive in the bounty and benevolence of God. Grace means gift. And I want to offer this nuance because this is what ties grace and love together. Grace is not a thing that can be given. It is not actually a gift such that it can be passed from one to another. Grace isn't naming an object or a thing that we can get even from God or that we can give to one another. There is no product. Grace is not a charm. It's not a spell. It's not the resolution of a balance sheet. It's not the result of your sincere magical thinking. It is the name of pure gift, true gift. Grace is the name of unconditional giving. Giving without condition. There is no transaction such that whatever it is, we're giving. Kindness, comfort, support, help, hope, love, laughter, challenge, critique, sympathy, empathy, healing, hospitality, welcome, belonging. Grace is to say that we give these without expectation of reciprocity. To give a gift without why. We give with no backhanded motive. Or simply to say we give. We give. That's grace. And Caitlin pointed out, even though to root love and grace in the unconditional seems cosmic in scope, it seems universal in depth, which it is. There is a particularity to love and grace that resists diluting it into the universal or abstracting it into the universal, because it's not just a thing or an idea. Grace always only shows up as personal, relational, or what we might call incarnational, meaning it might be a universal reality, but it shows up in a body. It shows up in somebody. It's always an interactive thing with a person. And the same with love. And I think I got this quote right. Cheesy, shitty religious spaces tend to try to over-universalize love. God is love. Love everybody. Love is the answer. But this is very often a love of convenience. A love when it's easy. It's a love without teeth because it doesn't get particular enough. It's too easy to say. And so it's not ever practiced. Caitlin said, universalizing love makes us colorblind, but we don't need to be colorblind. Love isn't colorblind. It's love that reminds us that it is how we treat color that matters. Love is the name that calls us to our own attention in terms of how we treat difference, how we treat diversity, not to pretend that everything is the same. This was the confusion, and I think the tension with the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Because Black lives are particular. And it is uncomfortable to see the struggle of Black lives, the injustice, the inequality, especially if we've participated in the systems that have created this injustice. To acknowledge this takes love. It is not convenient love. It is uncomfortable, unconditional love, which compels us to act on behalf of these lives. This got really uncomfortable for many, many people. And so for many people, it was so uncomfortable that the release valve was to claim the universal. All lives matter. And sure, yes, absolutely. No one is arguing that. All lives matter. All the way down, this is true. But when it comes not just to ideas about love, but to living in love, it is always particular. It is always particular. It's too easy to generalize the problematic, the different, the other person away from us, but love goes in the other direction. Love is an experience of the particularity of another person. And I would argue it's one of the deepest experiences of our own self, to love the particularity of another person. This is Caitlin's as well. I stole it, but it's super good. Universalizing love has to do with how we feel about ourselves. Particularizing love has to do with how we treat the other. And the reason this is so important is because at the end of the community statement, there is actually a sincere danger that we might say we do everything in the spirit of love and grace, and we might be talking about how we feel about ourselves rather than making a commitment to what we do, which has to do with how we treat the other. So we can make love and grace so big that they don't cost us anything. We can believe, celebrate them without actually doing anything in the spirit of them. But it actually works the other way too. We can play the same sort of reductionist game by making something so particular that it becomes trivial and it misses the universal value of human dignity and equity and justice. Stacy shared this tweet with me this week. It's not about bathrooms, as it was never about water fountains. Ouch. That particular enough for you? No. It's not about bathrooms, right? And it's not about water fountains. Bathrooms and water fountains are about the rights of people to equally inhabit public spaces. What we might say is a universal right to be seen and to be treated as equal, to be seen and to be treated as human. It's not about water fountains. It's not about bathrooms. This is always about that. This always points to a larger reality. The particular can always serve as an icon that points past itself to the universal, to the unconditional, and reminding us that this universal must be expressed in concrete, specific situations, like admitting what we do to people when we limit who gets to drink where and who gets to use which restroom. It doesn't get much more particular than that. And those questions can't help but ask about the larger, universal, unconditional values in which we claim to be rooted. So when we say we do everything in the spirit of love and grace, we're not talking about escaping into the abstraction of universal ideas or some sort of convenient belief statement. We're talking about the inexhaustible call to live in love and grace in the particularity of our daily experience. In fact, the only place to practice the universal is in the particular. The only place to embody the universal is in the particular. The only place to taste the universal is in the particular. Or as we wrap up the community statement as a call to action, we might say the only place to practice the spirit of love and grace is in what we do. The only place to embody the spirit of love and grace is in what we do. The only place we get to taste the spirit of love and grace is in what we do. The spirit of love and grace is universal, and it's beautiful. But what we do in that spirit is always particular, and it is only love and grace insofar as we do it. And this is the gift, I think, and the beauty of the Christian tradition. The scandalous good news of the humanity of God. And wherever you land on the story, wherever you land in this metaphor, I think it's beautiful and it's clear. That God is not the name of an abstraction, but in fact, for the love and grace harbored in the name of God to be most universally loving, most universally gracious and unconditional. If Christianity is about the humanity of God, then God is the name of the humanizing movement which surrenders the universal to inhabit the particular. surrenders abstraction to inspire messy, material, human life, forfeits generalization in favor of the depth of lived experience. When we suspend our disbelief long enough to allow just for a moment that Jesus might actually show us something of God, reveal to us the universal, unconditional love and grace, we are immediately reminded that the God that Jesus reveals is one inextricably bound to and experienced exclusively in the particular. Here is my body. Here's my blood. Not an idea or a belief worthy of our agreement, but a self-giving love worth living and dying for, an unconditional grace, a way of gift that is worth setting this table. Not just for all people, but for you. For you. For me. For us. The table of this unconditional love, of grace beyond reciprocity, has been set. It's open to us and to all people. It is open to us in particular. To you. It's open to you. To each of you. It's open to me. It's open to us. It's open to those of you online. It's open to those of you who are listening to this weeks from now in your car. The table of this love and grace is open to you, not a big idea called all people, but actually you. It's for you. It is open to us, and it is open to all people. And no one will ever be turned away. When you're ready, feel free to come and grab a piece of bread and dip it in the cup.